that it's all going well, and then we'll start getting it out there. Miss, go ahead and talk for a minute.
Hello?
For a second and make sure that it's all going well, and then we'll start getting it out there. Interesting. On mine, you sound a little bit low. I'm not sure it's coming through very well on the NDI. Oh, that makes sense right now, though. Okay. All right. Well, this sounds good. Let me know when you're done sharing it to everybody, and we'll go ahead and get started.
Oh, my stream?
Mm-hmm. All right, Miss, ready when you are.
Okay.
You ready to go? Okay.
All right.
All right. Go ahead and cue yourself in for the next screen, and we'll go from there.
On live scene or?
No, it's going to be the FireNation. I already did mine. Your dog on video decided to pop around again, so I gotta fix that for a second. Oh well. The joys of live streaming. We'll just fix that for a second.
I'm having the same issue for you too. Now you're a small box at the corner of the screen.
Hopefully it'll fix itself in a minute. If not, I'll just be a small box in the corner of the scene.
Yeah.
But everybody, welcome to another episode of FireNation. I have Miss Fire, the Hispanic conservative, who is joining me today, and we're going to be going over a gaggle of articles and news that's happened in this last couple of days, and some things that everybody should be aware of going into these next couple of weeks. So to start us off, we have California lawmakers who've piled a giant stack of bills on Gavin Newsom's desk, and they're set to be signed today, so we're not sure at this point in time which ones are signed and which ones are not. Ooh, actually, it just looks like they just got it updated. So, California Governor Gavin Newsom, who sought to position himself as one of the leading domestic critics of President Trump, will veto a newly passed bill that would have blocked the administration's rollbacks of Obama-era environmental standards. In a statement issued less than 12 hours before legislature adjourned for the year, Newsom said that he fully supports the principles behind SB 1 by Senate Pro Tim Tony Atkins. And however, the governor added the measure does not provide the state with any new authority to push back against Trump administration's environmental policies, and it limits the state ability to rely upon the best available science to protect our environment. The bills other than this that we see that are on his desk are SB 24, which requires access to abortion pills for college students at public universities by 2023. And public universities currently offer contraception and pregnancy option counseling, but none offer abortion services. This is going to be mandated that it's going to be readily accessible in college and on schools. The next is AB 170, last-minute Dynamex exemption for newspaper delivery workers. Newspapers argue switching the workers from contractors to employees would be financially debilitating. Miss, I want to give you a second to chime in on your thoughts on this, because I know you're very adamant about abortion and what your thoughts are on colleges now supporting this as far as making it mandatory on campus that the campus give it out to them.
One, it's very dangerous to have something like that be offered and not actually have a medical professional that, I mean, a school nurse, okay, yeah, but that's not going to be enough of a medical person that should be there for something like that. Though I'm a little confused, it says, but non-offer abortion services, but an abortion pill is an abortion service.
That's saying at this point in time, none offer abortion services. And piggybacking on what you're saying there, one of the things that we see time and time again with the people who are giving out these pills is they tell these girls that, oh, it's going to be fine and everything's going to be great. You're not going to have any problems. It's pretty bad. And if you want to know how bad it is, check out the movie Unplanned. The lady ends up going through and she has one of these because in real life she had an abortion. The premise of the movie is that she ended up becoming the youngest director for Planned Parenthood in Planned Parenthood's history. She had had an abortion in the past and she had taken the pill, and the lady said, oh, it's going to be fine, here's some ibuprofen, it's all going to be great. And the women who've taken this pill describe it as one of the most painful and excruciating experiences that go on to haunt them for a very, very long time. And it definitely is not something that should be taken lightly. And as far as I'm concerned, it's not something that should be taken at all. And it's extremely dangerous. We can go in a little bit later on to the topics of why it's so dangerous and why it's so bad. But in general, people are saying that, oh, we're overpopulated and, oh, we have these problems. But we're moving into a time right now that by 2030, we're going to end up seeing massive declines in our financial markets no matter what we do about it, because our birth rates have not been keeping up. In 1973 to 1979, I believe it was, we had a baby boom and we had birth rates as high as 0.29%. And now we've got birth rates that are right around the 0.13%. So we're not even halfway there of what we used to be. And what that leads to is it leads to people who are mandatorily going to start withdrawing their money from the stock market because their 401ks no longer allow them to put it in. And they're going to have to start pulling out of the stock market faster than the next generation can grow up and put it into the stock market. What happens when you have more sellers than you do buyers? You have price go down and total collapse. And so we are going to begin to seeing this happening because people have stopped respecting human life and valuing human life. Anything more you want to add to that, Miss?
Except for that one.
Okay. Next up, we have AB 681, and it provides voters with information before a presidential primary about opinions for switching from no party preference in order to cast a ballot in the election. And then SB 136 eliminates the automatic addition of prison time and sentences to some repeat offenders, the supporters argue it will reduce mass incarceration. So currently right now we have a system by which you go through and you rob somebody, you do your time for that. You get out, you've got a probationary period. If you go and commit a crime that's the same or similar crimes, then you go back in and you get a harsher sentence. This is actually going to continue incentivizing people to take more crimes and do more of these deeds because it pays. We've already seen massive amounts of crime now ever since we said, well, let's make it to where anything under $1,000 is not a felony. It's not anything bad. Let's just go ahead and make it to where nobody's going to do anything about it. So police generally now are not even showing up for shoplifters if it's under $1,000, and criminals know it. So we have the most amount of crime we've ever seen in the retail space that's taking place over and over again. And we have a kind of a funny, sad story to get to that happened recently at a Dollar General later on about this. But it's crazy what this world is coming to with that. Miss, any thoughts?
So eliminate, does that mean like they're gonna make the time shorter or just?
What it means specifically is that if you go through and commit the same crime you've just gotten out for, then you will not have additional time stacked on to the prison sentence. They'll treat it as though you had never committed any crimes prior to that. And you won't look back at the history. Now, it's only in some instances, but these instances, they're vague as far as I can see, to where if somebody wanted to, they could end up getting off on these and say, whatever, well, I'm basically a first-time offender. So it makes it to where your first-time offenders are going to be treated as equally as the guy who's already done a breaking and entering 6 times, in my opinion.
Okay, so basically they're not serving any time, really, for the second time that they do it.
Any more time. So they'll be treated as a first-time offender. So instead of getting 6 to 10 years like they probably should get, they'll probably get a first-time sentence of 2 years.
Yeah, it seems a little ridiculous because you're not teaching this criminal anything. They're not getting they're not really getting punished for it.
No, and we have a prison system right now it's more of a training place for criminals. It's college for criminals when you go into prison. And most of these people, they're not afraid of prison. They're not concerned about it at all. If anything, we should get more harsh about these sentences and figure out some things that are actually going to leave its mark on these people. If you rob from somebody, you need to be able to pay your service back, and I'm all for saying that you're going to have basically slavery in that term to say, okay, you've done a deed. Instead of us sitting you in a cell for 2 years, let's make you go out and clean up the neighborhoods for 2 years. Let's make you work, and let's make you do these other things. They already do that to some extent with police vehicles. Some of the prisoners who are willing will actually wash police vehicles, but other than that, that's all there is. All right, next up we have SB 328, which requires that middle schools start no earlier than 8 a.m. and high schools start no later than 8:30 a.m. Governor Brown previously vetoed a similar bill. And that one I think is probably bad from a standpoint of parents have jobs and they need to be able to go to those jobs. And if you're saying that the kids aren't going to be able to start school before 8 a.m., you're messing it up for every parent that has to go to work before that point in time and normally puts their kid on the bus at 7 a.m. or 6:30 a.m. and gets the kids out there. Sleep is one of those things that if you get your kids to bed early and they wake up early, it's all fine, in my opinion.
Yeah.
All right, Miss, you have any of these you want to tackle? Throwing you in the hot seat now.
Right.
Oh,
Well, AB 218 actually doesn't seem like a really bad thing in my opinion. This expands the status of limitation for childhood sexual assault. But I don't know. I guess I could be a little biased on the standpoint in the fact that, well, I was sexually abused as a child, but it's great if the actual allegations is not fake and you can prove without a doubt that you were a victim and a full investigation was done. So giving the victim extra time to get up the courage to say something, speak out against it, or have the person caught.
Okay, so this says existing law requires that. Here, let me go ahead and put this on. Existing law requires that the action for recovery of damages suffered as a result of childhood sexual abuse as defined by commence within 8 years of the date of the plaintiff's attains the age of maturity, or within 3 years of the date the plaintiff discovers or reasonably should have discovered that the psychological injury or illness occurring from the age of majority is caused by the sexual abuse, whichever occurs later, and provides that certain of these actions should not be commenced on or after the plaintiff's 26th birthday. Existing law also prohibits confidential provisions in settlement agreement arising from a claim of childhood abuse. This bill would expand the definition of childhood abuse, and which would be referred to as childhood sexual assault. This bill would increase the time limit for commencing the action for recovery and damages suffered as a result, and to 22 years from the date the plaintiff attains the age of majority, or within 5 years of the date the plaintiff discovers or reasonably should have discovered. Existing law, the Government Claims Act, generally requires the presentation of all claims for money or damages against public entities. The Government Claims Act excludes or requirement claims made from the recovery of damages. As far as I'm concerned, I say no on this one. I don't think this is a good idea. And my reasoning for that is, here's my thought. We have right now an existing bill that says that once you're an adult, you have up to 8 years to go through and say that I've been sexually violated, I had this assault that happened and took place on me. Once you get to 22 years, I mean, we're talking so long ago, your memory is going to be super, super murky, and you're not going to be able to do anything on it whatsoever. And it's a little bit like the whole Kavanaugh hearing. The lady comes out 26 years later and says he sexually assaulted me. Well,
Yep,
where
wasn't
the
that
hell was
proven to
this all that
be
time?
not true though?
Yes,
Through
but
an
this is my
investigation?
problem. Then you have a law that is not turning around and getting people to stand up to their attacker, because a lot of these time limits are actually put there so that you don't have these random damages that end up coming up from something just because you don't like someone. And if you can't do it within 8 years after you're done, I mean, let's say you've reached your 18th birthday. That's when your clock starts ticking based upon what I read. I might be wrong, I might not. But let's say you end up doing that. And if you can't do that by the time you're 26 years old, what makes you think that you're going to end up doing it by the time you're 44? And furthermore, I actually think it's completely wrong that you're able to have a sexual assault case and be able to turn around and say, okay, I'm just going to give them $250,000 to settle it. I think that's wrong, because then you create a system in which you have people who are able to say things or to do things, and then they come up with a reason why you did something wrong, and it's just a way to shake down the rich. And then you also have a second class of the rich being able to get away with things that any other normal person would have gone to jail for. I mean, take for instance all of the different cases with the politicians like Clinton or Trump that pay off these people to keep things quiet. I think it's wrong. I think it should be. And I think everybody has a right to know what exactly ended up happening. I just had a comment. EA de boa mano. I don't know what that means. What does that mean, miss?
I don't know.
I think it's Spanish. Hello on YouTube to whoever that is. I hope you're not trolling.
But yeah, okay, so when you put it that way, I completely understand what you're saying, and I completely see how that does make sense. Because I know for some states, like Illinois, it's 5 years of statute of limitation that you have. I don't know about California, though.
Well, and this would make it to where you have 22 years after you're 18, if I'm reading this correctly. So that means that you'd have until the age of 40 to be able to bring this up, which honestly, most of these assaults that happen that are not gone after right at the moment, they happen to kids. And kids are the ones who end up bearing the force of it, like you in your instance. And you didn't even have a voice or a say in the matter, and then by the time you did, it was pretty much pointless.
Yeah.
And this is more often the case. So what is it going to do for a 44-year-old woman to be able to say, I believe he did something to me, but not have any proof or anything on that? And you're just going to be bringing it out. The only case which I see this being beneficial is to do shakedowns on rich people. And in my opinion, I think we should just do away with them being able to pay it off entirely. If you did a crime, you should do the time. That's the way it works. It's not if you did a crime, here's enough money to be able to get away with it. Jesse Smollett all over again. All right, next up is SB 54, and it's identical bills that mandate that 75% reduction in packaging and plastics by 2030. And the question I would have on this is, how are you going to reduce by 75% the packaging material? You just can't do these things. And all of this stuff ends up being based on pollution to our oceans and things like that. But the study that was actually taken place is one that was done by a high school student. In fact, I'll bring that up. Miss, what are your thoughts on that while I look this up?
Well, one, what are they going to do with all the plastic bags that we do use and anything plastic that we have now? If they take it away, like, are they just going to throw it away, which pretty much does the same thing that they're trying to prevent? And then if we had gone back to paper, wouldn't they be complaining about how we're destroying the forest and stuff like that? What are they going to use if we're not allowed to use plastic anymore? Or paper?
All right, so this is actually based upon a USA Today story, and it says the anti-straw movement is based on 9-year-old suspect statistics, which now we already have 6 people that came out and said was bunk. Corrections and clarification. The earlier article misstated the estimated amount of plastic produced globally since the mid-1990s. The origin of the movement to ban plastic straws may come as a surprise. It began with a 9-year-old boy named Milo Kress and a 2011 campaign, Be Straw Free, when launched into awareness about plastic waste. His big finding: Americans use more than 500 million drinking straws daily, enough to fill 125 school buses. The figure has become highly touted since then, referenced in the ban coverage of the New York Times, the National Geographic's report from National Park Service, and USA Today. Now 16 years old, Kress just finished his junior year of high school and finds himself the face of a movement felt by global chains from Starbucks to McDonald's, and it's not without criticism, especially on his 500 million stat. It started years ago when Kress noticed a trend. While out to eat, he would see people take plastic straws out of their drinks and put them on the table, never actually using them. It didn't sit well. Anyway, this kid ended up making up this statistic. It wasn't actually anything that was verified, and it was just a number plucked from thin air. And then it was also saying that, oh, well, we are huge polluters of the oceans. But it turns out that 99.5% of all of the ocean's crap comes from 10 rivers, and not a single one of them is in the United States. So again, we're turning around and messing up our daily lives. And have any of you guys ever actually tried any of these stupid freaking straws that they give you at restaurants that are trying to be woke? They give you these cardboard straws that literally melt in your cup after about 10 minutes, and you're just
Feels
sitting there
squishy.
trying to, yeah, they're
It feels squishy.
squishy. You're trying to suckle on this cardboard crap that ends up getting into your drink, and I don't even want to think about the health ramifications of it. But at the end of the day, I mean, what are you actually doing? McDonald's actually said that they can't recycle the straws that they used to use. Starbucks responded by actually making a basically sippy cup lid that ends up using around freaking 50% more plastic than what they used for straws. And it's like, seriously, give me a break. At the end of the day, let's actually have a look at this soundly and decide whether or not what we're doing is actually causing a cause to a problem. And it's not. We have all of these other nations that are doing this crap. And America's not one of them. America is the greenest country by far. We're leading the nation despite all of these other things. And Trump has actually continued being one of the most green presidents out there, even after he ended up pulling us out of this whole green crap UN deal. So that was that. All right, on to the next one. This one is one of the biggest ones that we need to talk about tonight, and it's going to be very important moving into the future because it's quite scary as far as the accusations and things like that go. So California has adopted the broadest U.S. rules for seizing guns. Miss, you want to take this article, or you want me to do it?
I guess I can.
All right, take a crack at it, my beautiful and sensuous co-host.
Alright, now my reading is not that good, so bear with me. California adopts broadest U.S. rules for seizing guns. By Dawn Thompson. California Governor Gavin Newsom on Friday signed a law that will make the state the first to allow employers, co-workers, and teachers to seek gun violence restraining orders against other people. The bill was vetoed twice by former Governor Jerry Brown, a Democrat, and goes beyond a measure that he signed allowing only law enforcement officers and immediate family members to ask judges to temporarily take away people's guns when they are deemed a danger to themselves and others. 17 states and the District of Columbia have laws similar to California current laws, but the new law that takes effect on January 1st will be broader. Schools and and schools and workplace shootings on the rise. It's common sense to give the people we see every day the power to intervene and prevent tragedies, said the bill's author, Democratic Assemblyman Phil Tighe. of San Francisco. Newsom also signed a companion bill allowing the gun violence restraining orders to last 1 and 5 years. Although the gun owners could petition to end those restrictions earlier, Hawaii allows the restraining order petitioned by medical professionals, co-workers, and educators, but not employers. King's office said it cited information from the Brandy campaign against gun violence and the Coalition to Stop Gun Violence. Maryland allows the restraining order petitions by health care providers, and Washington, D.C. allows mental health providers to petition, while New York allows them for school administrators. California law will ac- require co-workers requesting the orders to have substantial and regular interactions with gun owners to seek the orders, and co-workers and school employees must get approval from their employers or school administration before seeking them. People seek the order People seeking the orders will have to file sworn statements signifying their reason for doing so. The measure was opposed by gun owner rights groups and the American Civil Liberties Union. The ACLU said the bill opposes a significant threat to civil liberties because orders can be sought before gun owners have an opportunity to contest the request. Those allowed to request orders under the new law may lack the relationship or skill required to make an appropriate assessment, the ACLU said.
Okay, so what this means in short is that you now have a bill that says that your coworkers, your boss, medical professionals, and there's even one on his desk, I believe, that's mentioning neighbors, that is saying that you can turn around and report your coworker or anybody else. So you've got a whole group of people right now who hate guns, who hate gun rights, who hate the Second Amendment, who don't know what it stands for, and who don't care. And you've got a whole group of people who are gun enthusiasts who are like Miss and myself. We believe in the Second Amendment and for the purpose for which it was placed there. It was not put there just for self-defense. It was not put there just for hunting. It was put there to be able to rebel against a tyrannical government. And this is extremely egregious to the Constitution, not just to the Second Amendment, but to the amendment that states that you do not have the ability to do search and seizure on somebody's home and personal property. Period. You can't do that illegally, and this is what they're doing. You have, let's say you go in and you have a boss who doesn't like your guns and doesn't believe in guns, and he finds out that you have, in fact, I have a boss that's very similar to that. He's an awesome guy, but we don't always see eye to eye, and he knows that during Freedom Week we ended up acquiring a few of the magazines that were legal during that week to acquire. Now, if he had been a jerk about it and wanted to be a jerk about it, he could say, hey, he's got this, he's been part of people who are groups of people that have guns, I don't feel safe around him, and all the rest of this crap. And all he'd have to do is say he likes talking about guns an awful lot and I don't feel good about him. And just because they say it has to be occurring on a regular basis, we all know people's propensity to lie. They say 1 out of 3 things that people say is a lie. So if that's the case, all you have to do is turn around and say, oh, well, I believe that this person's a danger to himself and others based upon the standard interactions that I have with him on a daily basis. And then it's a minority report thing. They come to your home, they take your guns, and then you have to go before a judge to appeal them taking your guns. It's unconstitutional. It's search and seizure without any type of warrants or permits for it. And you don't have any evidence produced to say that, yeah, we can do that. And then it's also a violation of your Second Amendment right. And this is what we're seeing more and more. Miss, your thoughts?
It's actually really scary to think about because, like you were saying, that what if they're not telling the truth? What if they're making things up? Because one, it's not really specific. on what they would consider a danger to yourself and others either, because person may say, oh, he's doing this and that, but you're not really doing anything, and they're making things up just because they don't actually like you.
Mm-hmm. That's exactly it. And moving forwards on this, we're going to continue to see more and more of these. But the problem that we have right now, really, when you break it down, I like to go through and I like to look at what are the core principles of what we see in mass shooters and we see in these people who are committing these acts. More often than not, there are massive warning signs. And massive warning signs. And let me go ahead and pull this statistic up real quick. Miss, if you want to tackle the next one, go ahead while I grab this information.
Read the next one?
Yeah.
Next article? Okay.
Yeah, read the next one. Comment on anything that you find interesting about it.
California bans hotels from using teeny plastic bottles. Hotels in the nation's most populous state will have to stop giving guests small plastic shampoo bottles under a new law set to take effect starting in 2023. Governor Gavin Newsom announced this Wednesday he had signed a law banning hotels from giving guests plastic bottles filled with shampoo, conditioner, and soap. It takes effect in 2023 for hotels with more than 50 rooms and 2024 for hotels with less than 50 rooms. Violars could be fined $500 for a first offense and $2,000 for subsequent violation.
Subsequent, that's right.
Subsequent violations. The law follows similar actions by some of the world's largest hotel chains. Marriott.
That's all right. Now comment your thoughts. A lot of these too, just read the beginning part because they normally get to it and then they go down into all kinds of little crappy details. But
Okay.
What are your thoughts on this, considering what we talked about earlier?
I just find all this silly and pointless. It's not going to change anything. Like you were saying, there's those 10 rivers around the world that are the actual cause of pollution, of maybe even more than we have plastic into the ocean.
Absolutely, and this is something to where it's going to continue getting worse and worse. And what I see more often than not in most of these cases is you have somebody who is actually trying to position these laws into effect just so they can make it so that you have people who are going to make money off of it. Take the diesel exhaust fluid stuff, for instance. One of the people who was involved in getting that bill passed was an individual who was an owner of the diesel exhaust fluid, and they had shares in the company and they had interest in the company. Well, now come to find out that diesel exhaust fluid is actually worse for the environment. We can never regulate it out. We can never filter it out. It ends up going down into such small particles after it ends up going through all the burning process and like that in the diesel vehicles, that it ends up getting down into the water and we can't get it out. So now we're drinking this shit and we still haven't done away with it. And then once they found out about that it's actually worse, they said, oh, well, we'll just keep using it because we have so much of it and so many vehicles that are on the road. What are we going to do? And really, for me, that sounds like a cop-out. You guys force something on people to make it work, and now you keep something on people to keep enriching yourself. So it wouldn't surprise me one bit to see the whole hotel bottle thing to be replaced by some little soap condenser company that's there, and see if, just do the research and see if one of these people is actually responsible for a company that sells a product that's going to solve the new legislative problem. And yeah, that's one of the things that I think we're going to end up seeing here soon, because I think that one will pass, despite how stupid it is. Now, on to this. This has been... Snopes has it as false information because there have been more shooters since 2018 when it ended up coming out based on this information, and there's been other people who have said it. But you have a vast majority of the shooters that ended up going in and shooting up these school shootings and all the rest of this crap that have been fatherless. And in our nation, we have a huge amount of people. So this is saying among the 25 most cited school shooters since the Columbine, 75% were reared in broken homes. Psychologist Dr. Peter Legman, preeminent expert on school shooters, found that most came from incredibly broken homes, not just to divorce and separation, but also infidelity, substance abuse, criminal behavior, domestic violence, and child abuse. And this is where it comes into it for me. More and more we see the instances of these things taking place, and we see the people who are going through and committing these crimes. They're children who are raised by our government. There's no ifs, and, or buts about that. You've got, no matter what, when you're looking at this, you have these kids who are raised by our government. The parents are both too busy or don't care, and they go and they work 2 jobs, too many hours. A lot of them end up divorced, and they don't dedicate the time that is needed to actually raise their children. And then we also have a school system, i.e. the government, who is now going through and making it to where these kids are bullied in school, they're beat up in school, they're picked on in school, and then the next thing you see is that if they punch back, they fight back, they hit back, they do anything like that, they're the ones that end up in trouble. And that shouldn't be the way it is. I mean, if you decide to take a fight and pick a fight and go through and bust somebody's lip up because they're being a dick to you, and you can say, hey, I've got proof that this person's being a dick to me, let it happen. That's the way you get violence out of schools, is by allowing a small amount of violence to occur so it doesn't feel like everybody in the world is against you. And then aside from that, parent your damn kids. We have too many kids in this nation who are not being taken care of, who are not being taught, who are not being reared in any way that would actually give morals. We have schools that decided to take out any semblance of religion and therefore any semblance of values, because at the end of the day, you're going to have a hard time convincing me, if there's not a God that cares about what I do, why should I not just be one of the badasses in the Old West and go out and kill anybody I want and take anything they want? After all, we're all just animals, if that's the case. And so if you're going to teach that in school, that we're all just animals and you're a Homo sapien, but your closest relative is a monkey, and look at what the monkeys do, you're going to have situations to where kids are acting like monkeys because of that. It's not freaking hard to understand. But yet this is what we have. And then they want to blame video games, and they want to blame this. And video games, what they've actually come to find out is video games actually cause less violence for violent video games, and they do have some benefits. The people who play shooters and things like that have faster reaction times, faster across the board than anybody else. And they find out that the doctors who play those type of games are actually better surgeons because they're more deft with their hands. They have better dexterity, they're better focused, they have better ability to go through and do these things. And so what I'm getting at is we have a problem that is school shooters, and we have a problem of this violence. But also when you go back and you look historically, we're actually not increasing the violence. And this may come as a shock to you, but what it is you have more violence that's in your face. You have more violence from the media. And I'll go ahead and see if I can pull that article up to show you guys. Miss, go ahead and tackle the next one. And just read the first few paragraphs and then comment on it.
Democrats reject push to alert ICE when illegal immigrants fail firearms background checks. This, like, the headline has already got me like, face bomb. Democrats this week. Yeah, go ahead.
This is the thing. This is what we're getting at. We have more and more of these articles coming out that show that there is a two-class system. You have the system of the natural-born people who are here in this country, who are able to turn around and legally purchase firearms. but they have to go through all these background check systems. And if they're a felon, then the Justice Department will get notified and they'll say, hey, you got no business purchasing this gun. Why are you trying to buy this gun? They'll have an office meeting. And we have the Democrats who are saying, well, we don't really want ICE people to be able to get in trouble for all of this. No, we shouldn't do that. All right, Miss, go on.
Democrats this week approved legislation to require background checks for essentially all sales and transfers of firearms, but reject GOP-led efforts to amend the legislation to alert law enforcement authorities when gun buyers, including illegal immigrants, legal aliens, just fail those background checks. The House Judiciary Committee voted in favor of the bill 2315 in a strict party line vote, sending it to the House floor. If approved by the full House, the bill would be the most significant gun control legislation. I can't pronounce that. Legislation approved by either chambers of Congress in at least a decade, although it stands little chance of passage in the Senate, where Republicans command a slim majority.
Yeah, so basically that is exactly it. Now, fortunately, I do have an update on that one, and it did end up getting shot down from the House, and the House did not end up passing that. However, it shows the bias to what they're doing and to what they're trying to get through and to pass, despite what we have going on for all of the legal citizens of this country to go through and say, oh, well, we're going to block you from buying a gun, and this is dangerous for you, that's dangerous for you. But the freaking guy who came in here already breaking the law illegally is not going to be notified to ICE. Why? Okay, so this is the article that I was trying to find. And it says mass shootings are not growing more common, and the evidence contradicts common stereotypes about the killers. This is from UNICEF, or not UNICEF, but PRI.org. Pardon me. And it says when 22 people were killed in El Paso, Texas, and 9 more were killed in Dayton, Ohio, roughly 12 hours later, responses to tragedy included many of the same myths and stereotypes Americans have grown used to hearing in the wake of a mass shooting. As part of my work as a psychology researcher, I study mass homicides, as well as the society's reaction to them. A lot of bad information can follow in the wake of such emotional events. Clear data-based discussions of mass homicides can get lost amongst political narratives. I'd like to clear up 4 common misconceptions about mass homicides and who commits them based on the current state of research. Violent video games and mass homicides. By Monday morning after the latest shooting, President Donald Trump, along with other Republican politicians, had linked violent video games to mass shootings. I admit my surprise, since only last year the Trump administration convened a school safety commission which studied this issue, amongst many other issues. I myself testified, and the commission ultimately did not conclude there was significant evidence to link games and media to criminal violence. Long-term studies of youth consistently find that violent games are not a risk factor for youth violence anywhere from 1 to 8 years later, and no less than the Supreme Court declared in 2011 that scientific studies had failed to link violent video games to serious aggression in kids. A 2017 public policy statement by the American Psychological Association Media Psychology and Technology Division specifically recommended politicians should stop linking violent games to mass shooting. It's time to lay this myth to rest. Mass shooters are male white supremacists. Early reports that the El Paso shooter was a white racist concerned about Latino immigration. Other shooters and such perpetrators of the Christchurch, New Zealand attack have also been white supremacists. Overall, the ethnic composition of the group of all mass shooters in the U.S. is roughly equivalent to the American population. You have around 55% that are white, 17 that are black, 9% Latino, 7% Asian, 4 are other, 4 are unknown, and 2.6 are Native American. And then it goes down the U.S. population list. 60.4% are White, not Hispanic or Latino. Black or African American are 13.4%. Hispanic or Latino are 18.3%. Asian are 5.9%. And the American Indian and American Natives are 1.3%. Hateful people tend to attract hateful ideologies. Some shootings, such as the 2016 shooting of police officers in Dallas, were reportedly motivated by anti-white hatred. Other shooters, such as the 2015 San Bernardino husband and wife perpetrator team, have espoused other hateful ideas, such as race, radical Islam. Most mass homicide perpetrators don't proclaim any allegiance to any particular ideology at all. Of course, mass homicides in other nations, such as several deadly knife attacks in Japan, don't involve U.S. race issues. As far as gender, it's true most mass homicide perpetrators are male. A minority of shooters are female, and they may target their own families. Mental illness definitely is or is not to blame. Whether mental illness is not related to mass shootings or criminal violence more broadly is a clear and nuanced question. Frankly, proponents on both sides often get this wrong by portraying the issue as a clear cut. As far back as 2002, the Secret Service reported, based on the case studies and interviews with surveying shooters identified with mental illness, typically either psychologists or psychosis or suicidal depression, as very common amongst mass homicide perpetrators. As for violence more broadly, mental illness such as psychosis, as well as a mixture of depression with antisocial traits, is a risk factor in violent behavior. Now, mass shootings by year dating back to 2006, you see that we had 24, and in 2018 we had 21, in 2007 we had 20, and in 2008 we had 27. And over the past 25 years, when we started studying this, well, I'll just read this. To be sure, the U.S. has experienced many mass homicides. Even stability might be depressing, given that the rates of other violent crimes have declined perpetually over the U.S. in the last 25 years. Why mass homicides have stayed stagnant while other homicides have plummeted in frequency is a question worth asking. And the problem is there's crazy people. That's my concept on it. And we already had this as something that our founders talked about. They clearly stated that you're not going to be able to control bad deeds and bad people. You're not going to do it. And to say that we need to do away with all of our firearms and that's going to help the situation, it's not. We literally have a country right now that's toying with socialism. Britain ended up getting rid of their guns, and now what we see in Britain is mass stabbings. And I kid you literally not, there is a new article out that's saying in Britain they're trying to ban all pointy kitchen knives because there's no reason to have a pointy kitchen knife in this day and age. And it's like the exact same thing they're saying about guns, but about kitchen knives being pointy. And then the next thing, they're probably going to be banning hammers because there's no reason to ever have a hammer in this day and age, and there's too many people dying from hammers. And this is what we see. The more you take away a citizen's right and ability to protect themselves, the more you're going to see these violent crimes that are just going forwards and persisting more and more. Miss, take it away.
Honestly, I feel like that's what's going to happen here. Like, I don't feel like it's going to be a long time before that is happening here. We're going to turn into Europe, like, in no time if we don't step up and do something.
All right, I'm pulling this article up because it's actually too good not to in regards to this. So this is from The Telegraph. And it says, ban of sales of pointed kitchen knives, as there is no reason for them in modern world, says Church of England. A ban on the sale of pointed kitchen knives as demanded by the Church of England, as it says there's no reason for them in the modern world. A letter to ministers backed by a judge, top trauma doctors and psychiatrists, police and victims. Church of England bishops say they're redesigning domestic knives to give them more rounded ends, would combat knife crime by making life-threatening injuries far less likely. They say sharp knife points were only used historically to pick up food because forks had not been invented, and it was a time when they could be carried openly. Sharp points remain only as an anachronistic hangover from the 18th century Britain, during which forks became commonplace. I mean, literally, I can debunk this right now. There is no reason to have a sharp pointed knife. Explain to me a watermelon. Done. Over. Okay, so tailing off of that last one about Democrats saying that they are rejecting to push to alert ICE. This is the article that ended up coming out. It was on Fox News, and it says Democrats reject push to alert ICE when illegal immigrants fail firearms background checks.
I already
And
went over that
Democrats
one.
this week. Yeah. I'm
Okay.
tailing into something, miss. I'm tailing into something, okay? I'm tailing. Tailing. Okay? All right. So this is the next one. And this is one of the reasons why we need a border wall and why we need to get a lot more strict. Not all of the illegal aliens coming over are bad people, but we do have a system in which we are set up to be able to receive immigrants, and by and large, America receives by far the most immigrants of any nation. The next up is Germany, and then after that, every other nation receives immigrants by about 5 times less than us per year legally. Now, the non-legal immigrants who are coming over is estimated just this last year is around 5 million illegal immigrants who are coming over and doing bad things, as we're seeing right here. An illegal alien accused of killing Molly Tibbetts gets trial delayed again. And he murdered the 20-year-old University of Iowa student Molly Tibbetts in 2018. He successfully lobbied for the trial against him to be delayed yet again. In 2018, Christian Barra Riviera, a 25-year-old illegal alien from Mexico, was charged with Molly Tibbetts' murder after police said he admitted to confronting and chasing down the young woman. Following a nationwide search, Tibbetts' body was found in a cornfield in Polska County, Iowa, and the illegal alien lived in the region of Iowa surrounded by sanctuary cities, as Breitbart News noted, and worked on a dairy farm using a stolen ID and security card after allegedly crossing the U.S.-Mexico border as a child. Next up, we have an illegal alien who was freed on bail despite shooting a trans woman. An illegal alien who was previously deported from the United States was released from jail on bail after he allegedly shot a transgender woman 6 times in an attack. Domingo Ramirez Cayente, a 29-year-old illegal alien from Mexico, is accused of admitting to police that he shot Danielia Calderon, a 35-year-old transgender woman in Dallas County, Texas. Police said Ramirez Cayente picked up Calderon, who offered him sex before she was allegedly shot by the illegal alien. Though Ramirez Caliente admitted to shooting Carrion 6 times, Judge Hall Turley set the illegal alien's bond at $25,000 and did not order that he wear an ankle monitor if he was released from custody. Before the district attorney office could step in, according to Dallas Morning News, Ramirez Caliente had already been released with no ankle monitor, and his whereabouts are currently unknown. What's your thoughts on this? I'm going to let you tackle this one because you're the token Mexican in the room, okay? She is 100% Mexican. She's got that whole
I'm
Mexican
Hispanic.
bloodline, all that. Yeah, yeah,
I'm first
yeah.
generation American, so let's get it straight for everyone. I'm legal.
All right, you keep saying that. Another beer for this madness.
Well, it's confusing and it's bewildering. So there's the Democrat Party who's all for whole LGBTQ, yet at the same time are helping illegal aliens or basically killing trans people. They're not doing anything about it, and they just let this person go free, basically. So, which side are you gonna protect more?
Now, my thoughts on it are is I am not for the whole transgender thing. I think it's a mental disorder personally, and I'm not afraid to say that because it is, and it has been classified as such in the past. And I personally believe that you're not going to be able to change anything. We've always had instances to where you have a person who's considered an effeminate man, and he acts like an effeminate man. I believe that if you turn around and do all the rest of that and you mutilate your body, you're still not going to be a woman based upon the chromosomes that are in your body. And I don't believe it does anybody any good to say that. I believe in accepting people as they are for who they are without the mutilation process. So I think it's completely wrong for this guy to go out and do that. The problem that we get into with all of this is that we once again see that our court system is protecting illegal aliens over the American citizens. And we're seeing this more and more in California, to where Governor Gavin Newsom has gone through and said, okay, we're going to go ahead and give all these kids under the age, I think it's 21, free medical care. And so you have people who are getting free medical care that's better free medical care than our veterans get, who aren't even from this country, who aren't contributing to this country, and who weren't born here. Why? Why are we treating a person not of this country better than our own? It's just wrong. So I wanted to bring that up based upon some of those last articles that we had. And then this one is the next up. Governor Gavin Newsom signs law capping rent increases in California. He signed a law that caps rent increases for some people over the next decade as the nation's most populous state grapples with housing crisis. The governor held a signing ceremony Tuesday in Oakland, in the area where a report earlier this year documented that 43% increased in homelessness over 2 years. Newsom called this moment profoundly important as California battles its housing affordability crisis. But he said the legislature must do more next year to encourage new housing development. The fact that we're leading the nation in trying to meet this moment is a point of pride, he said, and it's a point of principle that we need to continue this kind of energy to focus on that increasing that supply. The law would limit rent increases to 5% each year, plus inflation, until January 1st, 2030. It also bans landlords from evicting tenants for no reason, meaning they could not kick people out just to raise the rent. And while the law won't take effect until January 1st, it will apply to rent increase on or after March 15, 2019, to prevent landlords from raising rents just before the caps go into place. Now, this is one that I'll tackle to begin with because I don't think Miss knows too much about the housing market or those type of things. Here's the biggest problem that we have with this. We already have a housing crisis in this state. We already have a shortage of homes in this state. We've got a whole lot of people and a whole not lot of homes. And so the problem with this is if I'm going to go and purchase a property, I'm going to renovate that property. And that property then is going to bring me more income because I'm going to renovate the property. I'm going to put in new appliances. I'm going to make it better. And if I'm going to spend my hard-earned cash to dump, oftentimes it's approximately $20,000 to $30,000 to renovate an apartment complex of only about 4 units. If I'm going to spend that much money, I'm going to look to increase my rents because I've just made my place a nicer place. And that's how our capitalist system works. When you buy a property, you're able to go through and invest in that property, make the property better, and then you're going to be able to reap the benefits of what you put into that. So what you're going to do by this bill, and what he is doing by signing this into effect, is he's making it to where, one, property values are going to decrease because a lot of times your rent and your things like that are expected to be able to go up. And then also the people who are getting into that place are not going to be able to do it. It's literally like saying, okay, you have an old beat up truck or old beat up car, and you're going to drop a new engine in it, and you're going to be able to do a new paint job on it. You're going to fix all the doors on it. And originally the truck was worth, or the car was worth about $500. And you went ahead and invested around $5,000 into this vehicle. And you brought it back to cherry pristine area. You put blood, sweat, and tears in it. But now instead of you being able to sell that vehicle for $20,000 and make a profit on it, now instead of that, now you're going to be able to get a 5% increase on that, which amounts to about $25. So you're going to be able to buy that vehicle, put in all that money to it, and then you're going to be able to raise up the cost of it by about $25. Who's going to do that? Unless you just absolutely love it and want to keep it for yourself and no one else. So this is not going to fix the housing crisis. It's going to make the housing crisis worse, because you also have a situation to where if you have rent control, people are not going to be building new structures here. Why would they? They can go someplace else and build it. And then they're going to. And so this is the problem that we see here that's going to continue from that. And you want to tackle the next one, Miss?
All right. Armed robber shot by clerk instead of Dollar General. Armed robber brandished and pointed a gun at several people demanding cash. An armed clerk shot and killed him. Normally, this kind of story would get a paragraph or two on a back page of the local news section of a newspaper. These aren't normal times. Robber's family angry at clerk. At one time, family members of violent criminals and would either remain silent or issue apologies for the harm their criminal family members had inflicted. That assumes, though, that the family possesses good principles. This female.
I'll take it from
Yeah.
here. I'm going to go ahead and play a short snippet of the video on my stream real quick, and then we'll discuss it for a bit. But this is just getting into the craziness of it all. Okay, so just so I don't take all of Mrs. time away from her stream, leaving dead air there. An armed robber brandished and pointed a gun at several people, including the other people who worked at this Dollar General. The guy at the Dollar General, who was the cashier, was armed legally. He pulled out his gun and shot the person trying to rob them and threatening them with the gun in the chest. Now the siblings are coming out and saying that, oh, he's not that bad of a person and he shouldn't have done it. And the people in the comments and the people who are talking about this are saying, well, the money was probably insured anyway. He should have just let him go and let the police handle it, because that's what they're there for. And the problem comes in is we see this time and time again. If the police had actually gone after this guy and there was a shootout, then there inevitably would be Black Lives Matter rallies shutting down the city, tearing up buildings and businesses and all kinds of the rest of this, because this is the mindset of entitlement that we have here. You do wrong, you threaten people with danger, and you end up dead. That's the way it works, and that's the way it should work in a civilized society. We have no room in a society for people who are going to be doing those type of activities. And if you get caught in the moment getting dead in the moment, that's on you. And you own that. That's 100% your responsibility. The police also, later on in this video, I'll go ahead and skip right here. So Rapley may have been involved in several other commercial robberies. At the end of the video is what it says. And this is what we see time and time again. You've got all of these people who are committing these robberies, committing these crimes, and they just want free passes. And their families want free passes for them. And then they're all pissed off when they finally end up getting justice. And it makes no sense to me whatsoever. Miss, thoughts?
When I saw this video for the first time on Facebook and all the other places that it's showing up on, like Instagram, all these social medias, I couldn't help but laugh at how dramatic and how it was just dramatic overall, how the siblings were freaking out and basically, even though they kinda acknowledged that their brother was committing a crime, they kinda just threw it all to the side and was like, basically, well, he shouldn't have had that gun and you shouldn't have shot him. What's funny is that it's his store. He can have a gun if he wants to. If he has his weapon there, it was bought legally and everything, he can have his weapon there for his own protection. His store, he can do whatever he wants. And most of all, if this person who came in basically pointing his weapon at every person in that store, what was he supposed to do? Sit there and be like, just kill me? That, I don't know, the way that family acted throughout the whole thing was really ridiculous. They knew their brother did wrong, and he threatened people, and if the clerk hadn't reacted and acted swiftly, who knows, someone would have been dead and it wouldn't have been the criminal. It would have been an innocent person.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. Miss, stop moving back and forth in your damn chair. You're turning into a pixelated damn mess on my screen, okay? Sit still. You're beautiful when you're still, okay? Sit still. She's getting all into it. She's like, I'm fired up. I'm going to move all around in my chair. But no, this is what we see. The criminals are all in support of you having your gun rights taken away. That criminals think it's the best idea since sliced bread. I mean, at the end of the day, I mean, yeah, let's do away with all those guns. I don't get mine legally anyway. That just means that many more people are not allowed to defend themselves against me. And this is what we see. We actually see this in our rates and crime violence rates. And God, look at Chicago. In Chicago, you're not allowed to have weapons there. You're not allowed to do concealed carry and all that crap. And we see mass shootings there every week. Nobody cares. The same week the Parkland shooting happened, we had like 76 people get shot the same weekend. It's nuts. All right. Next up. This is from CNN and on a Breitbart article. CNN, tens of thousands of fraudulent African refugees are living in America. There are likely tens of thousands of fraudulent refugees from Africa living in the United States, as CNN investigation reveals. An investigative report by CNN, fraudulent refugees from Kenya who posed as persecuted Somalis, detail how they and their entire families came to the U.S. and lived on food stamps for years. The level of fraudulent refugees, particularly from Kenya, but posing as persecuted populations from other African nations, at least in the tens of thousands, according to CNN investigations. An untold number of these fraudulent refugees are living in the U.S. and being resettled using IDs and retelling fake stories. In many cases, Africans have bought their way into the U.S. refugee resettlement program. One case described by CNN involves a Kenyan national in his 20s who is currently attempting to buy his way in the U.S. by paying off middlemen that can fraudulently get him classified as a Somali refugee. As far as the Kenyan and his brother And so far, the Kenyan and his brother have paid $300 to each get refugee status, obtaining a number and a card that classifies them as refugees. Soon, the Kenyan told The Kenyan told CNN they will pay the solicitor $12,000 to help them make it to the U.S. fraudulently. He told me to say I was born in Somalia, so I came through the border of a bus full of people. Kenyan told CNN of the fake story. The solicitor... now I'm just as bad as Miss on this one. Told him and his brother to repeat that we're running from there. As Breitbart News has reported, the Bush administration was forced to shut down a refugee program out of Africa in 2008 after DNA tests by the State Department revealed nearly 90% fraud rate in the system. And this is another big thing that we're seeing, and it's one that absolutely has to be addressed. Miss, thoughts?
I don't really have anything to say for this one.
Well, one of the things that I wanted to bring in are these two studies real quick that are pretty damn important. It says a new fair study immigration costs $116 billion annually. Washington, D.C. illegal immigration in the U.S. costs federal, state, and local taxpayers a staggering cost of $116 billion a year, an increase of some $16 billion compared to previous estimates, according to a new study released by the Federation for American Immigration for Reform, FAIR. The study is most comprehensive to date and costs the federal, state, and local taxpayers of the nation's 12.5 million illegal immigrants and their 4.2 million citizen children. The costs are soaring. It's freaking crazy. So there's that one. And then there's this one right here. And it says that 63% of non-citizen households access welfare programs compared to 35% of native households. So in 2014, 63% of the households headed by a non-citizen reported that they used at least one welfare program compared to 35% of native-headed households. That's even of the people who are coming here legally and just being scabs. They're taking off the back of the American taxpayer and saying, oh, pay for me, pay for me, pay for me. I'm sorry, but if you can't come here and if you can't actually be a part of our system and help our society grow, we want anybody who wants to come here, who wants to be able to make a life for themselves, to come here, by all means.
Well, not
As
just
far as
come
I'm
here, but
concerned.
assimilate.
Yeah, assimilate. You have her. If you want this country to become like wherever the hell it was that you came from, because, and I say that legitimately, because if you're coming here saying that you're fleeing wherever you're coming from, it's hell. So anybody who's a SOJ out there wants to try to catch me on that one, good luck. Because these people are saying they're fleeing violence, they're fleeing problems, they're fleeing these issues, they're fleeing that issue. And then they come here and then they want to change this country into what their country was. And our country's laws and our country's beliefs are the reason why we end up actually being able to be the best country in the world. There's no doubt about it. We are the leader in the world, and we have been, and we're the youngest nation in the world, of any size anyway. But you're not going to get around that. And so if you have 63% of non-citizen households that are accessing welfare programs in our country, what does that do to our country? It lowers our country down. If you can't, within the first 2 years of you coming here, if you can't figure out how to become profitable in the freest country in the entire world, then go back to wherever you came from, because you're not trying. It's pretty freaking easy. It really is. Next up. SpongeBob SquarePants is a violent racist colonizer, college professor says. Yeah, I just thought I'd go from that and throw it in there. You know the answer. It's SpongeBob SquarePants, the iconic cartoon character loved by kids and adults alike, who on Friday turned 20 years old. The animated sponge spends his day getting into wacky adventures along with his buddies Patrick Starfish, Squidward Tentacles, and Mr. Krabs. And without speaking down to children, the lovable absorbent square dulls out some life lessons along the way. But a University of Washington professor thinks SpongeBob is violent and racist. Yes, seriously. Holly M. Barker has penned the piece Unsettling SpongeBob and the Legacies of Violence on Bikini Bottom. Billions of people around the globe are well acquainted with SpongeBob SquarePants and the antics of the title character and his friends on Bikini Bottom. By the same token, there's an absence of public discourse about the whitewashing of American military activists through SpongeBob's occupation and reclaiming of Bikini Bottom's atoll lagoon. SpongeBob SquarePants and his friends play a role in normalizing the settler colonial takings of indigenous lands while erasing the ancestral Bikinian people from their non-fictional homeland, reads the abstract Barker's piece, which I think we've seen enough of. This is how frickin' crazy our world has gotten. SpongeBob SquarePants, beloved by the LGBT community everywhere. Or I guess now I need to say LGBTQ ABCDZFJ. I don't know. It's getting up there though. Missed thoughts. Is SpongeBob racist?
No. I mean, I don't think it's racist. Oh, I don't know how they make that distinguish. Like, I don't know how that all fits into being racist.
Tell me how racist he is, Edith. You know, you're a minority, right?
I don't know. I don't know why they.
Growing up, you knew he was racist, right?
Yeah,
It's obvious. See,
I don't
she
know.
admitted it. SpongeBob is racist. Now, if you have a SpongeBob sticker on your vehicle or on your phone case, or you like SpongeBob, you are a racist.
Well, I used to like SpongeBob, so I used to watch SpongeBob growing up, even until I was 15. But
I mean,
I don't
let's be honest.
understand.
If we're going to talk about anything on SpongeBob, SpongeBob was pretty freaking weird overall. Really freaking weird. And he had some really weird antics and stuff like that that I definitely did not think was appropriate for a kid's show. But
No.
then again, that's all these shows now. I mean, remember when we took our kids over to see the Despicables movie when it came out? And they were going through, and the very first scene, you had all the naked butts and
No,
dancing around. Like,
that
come
was
on,
actually
man.
the Minions.
Minions.
Yeah.
Minions, yeah.
I mean, it ain't this all. None of these cartoons are necessarily racist, and well, at least the ones I've seen, I have not seen any cartoons or whatever that would be even considered racist as a minority, quote unquote, or whatever. Some of them kind of have little hitting double jokes in there, maybe sexually wise, but
Stop moving your chair back and forth. It looks so bad on stream, miss. Just stop it.
whatever.
Pick a stationary area. Twiddle your toes. Twiddle your toes. Go on.
But nothing that would be thought of to be racist or anything. But then again, these are all jokes. When has jokes been considered bad? Till recently, I guess, but it's. I find this whole article to be silly.
It is. In fact, all these things are silly. The next one is also silly, and I just wanted to point this out for the SOJs who are out there because they were super against the Joker movie because the guy who started the Joker movie and who had wrote the script for it was actually saying that comedians are not going to try to be funny anymore. They're done with it. That's why you're not seeing any comedy movies that are actually coming out anymore, because there's way too many people who are offended by politically incorrect things. And so with Joker, he made a politically incorrect movie that so far has done really, really well. and I'm very happy for him. So I just wanted to throw that out there. I'm glad to see that somebody's fighting back about the political incorrectness and all the crap that we're dealing with, because honestly, whatever happened to when you're a kid, you end up having the sticks and stones may break my bones, but words may never hurt me. Now it's sticks and stones are kind of bad, but your words are violence, and I'm probably going to skewer you with my toothpick. All right. Any thoughts on that, miss? Okay. Next up, Rashida Tlaib. We're considering jailing the president's allies if they don't comply with impeachment inquiry. Okay. That doesn't sound like mob tactics. Agree with us or we'll throw you in the prison. It kind of reminds me of that wicked heart bitch who was on Alice in Wonderland, the heart lady. Do you think my dress is wonderful? Well, I think that one's a little bit weird. Throw him in the chains now.
Or off with their heads. Basically, same thing though.
Basically, whatever. Give me a break. All right. Rashida Tlaib is one of key members of the Progressive Congressional Squad. Reiterated a claim Sunday that Democrats are quietly considering jailing allies of President Donald Trump if they do not comply with the White House impeachment query. Tlaib told local Detroit news program Deadline Detroit that Democrats who have issued a number of subpoenas to Trump friends, family members, and administration officials have discussed detaining those who don't show up to testify. There have been actual serious conversations about what the logistics would look like if we did have to force someone through a court order to come before a congressional committee. Congress typically negotiates with potential witnesses who receive subpoenas but have concerns about testifying. Jailing those who refuse to comply with a demand for testimony would be a novel approach, which Tlaib acknowledged. It's pretty uncharted territory for many of us, even for Congress. I mean, really? This is what we're regressing to as a nation. You already have several of these people who've already said, I don't have any more information to give you, and I don't want to be back in the public eye, and there's nothing that's going on that I'm going to tell you about because there's nothing going on. And they've already stated that and reiterated that over and over again, yet they want to do that, screw their day up, and then turn around and just throw them through muddy water again and put their head on all these headlines again. And this is what we see from the media time and time again. You have people like, take for instance that Covington High student who had just stood there with a smirk on his face when that Indian dude came up and started pounding in his face with a drum and trying to cause a scene. He had had issues in the past, the Indian guy had, and was trying to start an issue. And then a photographer took a picture. They threw that kid in the mud, tore him all up, threw him through everything else. He was front news for 2 weeks at least. Now you go through and you look at this little Greta bitch who has a hard-on about the whole global warming thing. We're all going to die immediately. We need to all live like, what's the Amish? We need to all live like the Amish. We need to go back to those days, shut down anything like that, because the only thing we can do. And I guarantee you she flew over there to be able to make that speech. But when you criticize her, how dare you criticize a child? She's only a child. They're damn near the same age, but it's how dare you criticize a child that's literally talking nonsense. And you go through and you throw a Covington kid who just smiled and did nothing on the front page for 2 weeks.
I was gonna say, I mean, people say he was smirking, but that could have just been his weird smile. Like, some people smile weird. He could have just been being nice and just smiling. I mean, if the other Indian guy wants to act like he was being threatened by a smile, I mean, the guy came up to the kid. He could have just walked away. He got into this kid's face, who was smiling at him, and was playing his little whatever it was. He could have, like, tried to hit, like, he could have been the one trying to instigate an attack on the kid. But instead, they switch it up and probably make it to where the kid was basically doing something when he wasn't.
Well, and that's exactly the story.
And I did hear, it has been a while, but his school was threatened with being shot at, while they're also saying that we shouldn't be having guns because of mass shootings, yet are fine and are threatening kids with a like shootout and stuff, and having his family and them threatened with getting shot.
Okay, so this is from the New York Times, and it says fuller picture emerges of viral video of Native American man and Catholic students. A fuller and more complicated picture emerged on Sunday as the videotape encounter between the Native American man and a throng of high school students, boys wearing Make America Great Again gear outside of the Lincoln Memorial in Washington. Interviews and additional footage suggest that an explosive convergence of race, religion, and ideological beliefs against a national backdrop of political tension set the stage for the viral moment. Early video excerpts from the encounter obscured by the larger context and flaming outrage. Leading up to the encounter on Friday, a rally for Native Americans and other indigenous people was wrapping up. Dozens of students from Covington Catholic High School in Kentucky, who had been in Washington for the anti-abortion March for Life rally, were standing on the steps of the Lincoln Memorial, many of them white and wearing apparel being the slogan of President Trump. There were also black men who identified themselves as Hebrew Israelites, preaching their beliefs and shouting racially combative comments at the Native Americans and the students, according to the witness on the social media. Soon the Native American man, Nathan Phillips, 64, was encircled by an animated group of high school boys. He beat a ceremonial drum as a boy wearing a red Make America Great Again hat stood inches away. The boy identifies himself as, in a statement released on Saturday night, as Nick Sandman Jr. It was provocative imagery that rocked the nation across social media, leading many, including the student's own school, to condemn the boy's behavior as disrespectful. But on Sunday, Mr. Phelps clarified it was he who had approached the crowd and intervened because racial tensions, primarily between the white students and black men, were coming to a boiling point. I stepped in between to pray, Mr. Phelps said. In his statement, Mr. Salmon said he did not antagonize or try to block Mr. Phillips. I did not speak to him. I did not make any hand gestures or aggressive moves, he said. The encounter became the latest touch point for racial and political tensions in America with diverging views. Now, even this story right here is bullshit. When you look this guy up, who is this guy, let me see.
Well, yeah, because when I saw the actual video, the full footage, to what actually happened, and it was not like they're showing it at all, or not how they're saying it is. Like when you actually see the full video, you know that from the beginning that it wasn't the kid who started anything. It was the Black Israelite tribe, or whatever they want to call themselves, the Native American guy or Indian guy, whatever he wants to call himself.
Now I'm going to go ahead and lower this down because, and I'm wondering if this is the edited one that had it beforehand. Yeah, I went ahead and lowered this down because I didn't want to do it because these guys are using a lot of racial slurs and actually calling the white boys the N-word and the rest of it. But this guy right here actually walks into the crowd and starts banging this drum in front of this kid. Now, you as an American citizen have the right to go wherever you want to go. Just because somebody comes up and starts banging a drum in front of you, and the article, as for what he's saying, says that he wants to go in between. No, he wanted to go up and mess with that kid, which is why he was right there in front of his face and trying to do that. He wasn't trying to be a mediator and just getting in between two sides. In fact, you can see that the two sides were way apart from each other, but his story is bogus, and so is that other one. So it's just stupid to sit here and watch these things. Tribal elder and viral standoff video was not a Vietnam veteran, records show. So again, he lied about that too. All right. Any more thoughts on that mess? Ooh, we're down to the last two. All right, let's go ahead and get to these. Donald Trump taunts Hunter Biden as he leaves board of Chinese investment firm. President Donald Trump continued taunting former Vice President Joe Biden's son on Sunday after Hunter Biden announced that he was stepping down from a Chinese investment firm. Where's Hunter? He totally disappeared, Trump wrote. Hunter Biden's lawyers released a statement on Sunday announcing that he would step down from the board of the private equity fund backed by Chinese state-owned investment entities. After visiting China with his father in 2014, Hunter Biden secured a $1.5 billion investment. In his statement from his lawyer, Hunter Biden promised not to serve on any other foreign-owned companies if his father was elected president. That prompted Trump to question Hunter's other possible financial ties. Now looks like he's raided and scammed even more countries, Trump wrote. Media is AWOL. It's unclear whether Hunter Biden will divest his business interests in China-backed investment firm despite stepping down from the board. Trump pressured Hunter Biden's questionable business ties during a pair of back-to-back political rallies last week. But this is one of the things that we're seeing more and more of. And it's kind of crazy to think that somebody who is preaching about all this climate wokeness and all the rest of this would be on the board of AIPAC in Ukraine, and he'd be going through and being in charge of the oil over in that area. Why does a guy who has no background, who has criminal records, get on a seat in the Ukraine? What are your thoughts, Miss Annie?
Not from.
Okay. And then the last bit of news I just found interesting, but I don't really have too many comments on, is the Islamic State affiliates break free camp in Syria. Escape exacerbates fear that Turkish incursion will allow extremists to rebuild strength. Hundreds of foreign women and children linked to the Islamic State escaped a camp in the northeastern Syria where Turkish-backed fighters attacked it. U.S.-backed Kurdish forces controlling the area said rising fears that the Turkish offensive will undermine American efforts to eliminate the extremist group. The incident occurred at camp of Ain Issa, located along a highway Turkey had identified as strategic in an offensive that had launched last week to drive Syrian Kurdish forces away from its border. So basically we ended up seeing that over there in that area they had a bunch of ISIS fighters who had escaped, and now they're free, and they're concerned that they're going to rebuild and regroup and refight over there. But that's all I got. Anything else, miss? All right. Well, everybody, thank you guys for tuning in. I hope you guys enjoyed the show. Give a like, comment, subscribe, share it around, and have a great night. This will be Fire and Miss Fire taking off.
Bye.